Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you today. I have never done this type of presentation in Italy, and it's a presentation with a global perspective. But I will make sure that I don't sound completely silly, because every country has their own specifics when it comes to retail media and retail in general, of course. I have the fortunate role to be focused on retail products at Nielsen IQ. I oversee all retail products that have to do with collaboration, where the partnership between the retailer and the supplier, a transparent partnership around data insights, creates more value for the retailer and the supplier together. It's a win-win situation. That's what I'm focused on. Retail media fits into that, but I'll have to explain why. The definition of retail media is something that is often changed based on who's speaking. If a e-commerce platform provider talks about retail media, then they know exactly what it is, and it's going to be sponsored ad products, or it's going to be something related to their business. If an in-store display provider talks about retail media, they know exactly what it is as well. They say it is digital displays in store or near stores. The truth is, retail media is a lot of different things, and it has been around for a very long time. It has been around for a long time in Italy as well. Retail media is essentially the media business of a retailer. It's when a retailer sells media. That's as simple as it is. And why would they do that? Is because they want to provide the service to suppliers, to manufacturers, to the brands, to reach their shoppers in a timely and relevant way, close to the point of conversion. That's what retail media is. And it's very different in different countries today. And Italy is a country where there's more opportunity, much more opportunity. If I look back in the US, for instance, where I had the opportunity to work for 20 years in digital media, the last 10 years was in retail media. I had the opportunity to talk to more than 100 retail media networks, more than 100 retailers worldwide. By the way, I have counted that there are more than 635 retail media networks in the world today. Everybody is trying to monetize or is trying to connect the supplier or the brand to the shopper. And the way we used to do that in the late 90s was simply to organize our CRM. The retailer would, basically let people sign up for email. They would, reach the shopper that way, or they would organize their flyers or their paper, circulars in the store. When digital came around, it became the promise of targeted media. Just focus on the shoppers that are important, or just focus on this location. And that programmatic media, that targeted media was used by retailers in kind of an enterprise marketing way to go and grow their digital business. And everybody wanted to up each other, and sometimes they went too far, where they thought they were doing something very precise, but you couldn't see the results of it because it actually technically wasn't working all that well. And so it moved on to e-commerce versus performance media. It was about the last mile, about creating a conversion, what was the cost to the first order, how could you bring people into your digital platforms, download your mobile apps, and drive performance that way. And that's when we started talking about the word retail media, because what I meant was retail performance media. We are going to try to, in a very precise way, increase the performance and sell media that performs higher than what agencies would do with traditional media outlets. And the retailer got involved, and the retailer in a large way overpromised on that. Now, I know in Italy, I think we're probably more in that stage still, and it's a challenging thing. Consultants come in and say, this is your opportunity, but because you know the market better and you know your business better, either as a supplier or as a retailer, you will say that's probably not true. And so your enthusiasm for the topic is challenged, right? When they just say it should be $10 million or 10 million euros, and you don't see a path that way. So today I'm here to talk about the last phase, the today and tomorrow phase of retail media, which was much more about collaboration. It's much more about what the gentleman that presented just before me were talking about. They were talking about retail media in their way, which is you first have to prepare a lot, you have to have a lot of strategy before you can create that value for the brands to invest in your media business. So it's about relevancy. It's about giving something back to the shopper. It's about being centric to what your shopper needs in the location they are, based on the behavior they have, based on the needs they have. And retail media in that way can be very much a win-win-win. Win for the shopper, that's the most important thing. Win for the brand, respect the brand as if it's your customer when you're a retailer, and then ultimately win for a retailer because retailers can improve their margin and create an alternative revenue stream if their business is set up with the right data, with the right content, with the right tools, and with the right talent. So that's the history. Now, if we look at the numbers, Europe counts about 120 retail media networks. In Europe, the whole business is 25 billion in 2027. A year ago, the same research company said it will be 25 billion in 2026. So it's slipping. It's not growing as quickly as it grows elsewhere in the world, and that has to do, of course, with fragmentation and the general culture and attitudes towards insight sharing and things like that. In the US, retail media is already just as big as linear TV. It's around $55 billion, $60 billion a year, and it is, competing with linear TV for dollars as well. The dollars are shifting. So there are agencies and brands that say, the money I'm spending on linear TV probably would work better if I gave it to the media business of retailers, and so that's where the profit for retailers comes from. It actually works, right? So, but it's not growing as quickly anymore. It is already very big, whereas in Europe, retail media can grow at a rate of 50%, and that would be conservative. So, here's what's true about retail media. It's the same that's true about just anything traditional retail. It's about having the right products, putting them in the right places, pricing them correctly, marketing them and selling them through the right channels, and doing it at the right time. It is the basic way to win the shopper. And to do that, retail media is a part. It's not a whole story, of course. Understanding the shopper is something that is the most important. Not for the retailer to understand the shopper, mind you. It's for the brand, for the media buyer to understand the shopper at that retailer and being able to understand what they can do, what objective they can reach, and are they willing to spend a premium, spending more on media rates than you would do to traditional digital media, and get the objective accomplished with that retailer in collaboration. So understanding the shopper, the retailer organized to delight that shopper, maybe it's through including value, including digital promotions, including the right assortments, providing the right campaigns and events, and then it's about engaging the shopper through all these channels that are on the screen behind me. Typically, on the bottom left, you would say, all right, it's on-site media, or all the way on the bottom. It's media on your website. That's part of it. But when I surveyed about 100 retailers recently, and I have more survey data that I will share in a bit, out of those 100 retailers, the on-site portion, the e-commerce, where they do sponsor product ads and banners, is actually the smaller portion of their media revenue. Their revenue comes from other things. The revenue comes from also serving media off-site, driven by the data out of your loyalty programs. It is also serving influencer media on social networks and using a co-branded approach there. It is about even things like live events in front of the big hyperstores. It's about all of these things together. That is defined as the media network. This is defined as the retail media business, and it's branded that way. A retailer in the US is going to either use their own brand or something that is a variation on that, and put all those marketing initiatives, all those initiatives under that umbrella and run that as a big data company. Very precise, very disciplined, very automated. So here's what we're talking about. We just heard about retail consumerization, and retail media is the activation portion of that. Understand the shopper. Really prioritize specific categories and specific markets and focus the dollars there when you're going and activating. Organizing to delight, it can be many things, but one of the things that I want to focus on is give something back to the shopper for the opportunity to manage their data, to understand their behavior, to having them in your loyalty program. Do something back for them. It needs to be a fair value exchange. And when you do that, you may not call it retail media, but it is what grows your business. It's what grows the amount of shoppers that become loyal to you as a retailer. And that's also an objective of retail media. It's not just performance, it's brand loyalty, it's awareness. For instance, I had a chief marketing officer of Dollar General, a big retailer with 18,000 stores in the US, say that he had a very specific real estate strategy to put his stores where other stores were not. He was specifically thinking about underserved areas, rural areas in the US. And his main goal for his retail media network was he knew that his shoppers were going to Walmart, were going to a very big store that had a very large assortment on a regular basis, and they were literally driving past his stores to get there. They were investing an extra maybe half an hour to get to that store, and they could have just bought that product at his stores, at the Dollar General stores. And so he wanted retail media to be all about avoid that longer trip, make shoppers aware that the brands that they buy and love are also available at the same prices or even lower at his stores. That's the objective. And he built an $80 million retail media business just on that vision to make sure that every major CPG or FMCG brand in his store was investing to drive that shopper to spend less time going to Walmart versus going to his store. It's just an example, right? So that's how we think. The retailer is unique. They have their own idea about what is the strategy behind running a retail media network. And when you find it, then you focus on that. It's really not about, going to your brands and just asking for money to invest in a new product that you've created, which you call retail media. It can't be about that, because then the dollars will just shift from something else that they do with you to the retail media. No, you want new dollars to come in. And I'll talk about this in a bit. But just to put a point on the benefits of running a proper retail media network. For customers, it has to be about being engaged appropriately, timely, with content that's valuable to them, for instance, discounts, and an experience that is completely relevant to them. If you can't do that, you can do more harm with your retail media network than good, and that's definitely not where we want to go. For brands, it's clear. Brands want insights. And I know yet as a retailer, you necessarily don't want to go sell your data to brands. Maybe you don't have the kind of relationship where you can ask the brands to pay to get the insights. Well, don't do it that way. Ask the brands to pay for something they already pay for, media, and if they are, running enough media with your business, you will generate insights from that. And you will be able to share your insights indirectly and monetize them indirectly with the brands. Brands will love that, right? Many brands that buy media from Amazon.com, for instance, don't do it because their product ships easily and is going to be flying off the shelves and be shipped all over. No, they're doing it because they want to get the insights. That's the point of it, right? PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, they don't sell a lot of product on soda drinks and those types of products on Amazon.com, but they sure spend a lot of advertising dollars there because it comes with a system that really in a very real time tells them a lot about their shoppers, how they behave, what they're looking for, what assortment they like, and so forth. So, and for retailers, ultimately, there is a need for retailers to take their unique assets that they have. The most sophisticated data in the world sits with retailers. The most accurate and frequent data sits with retailers. If they have a loyalty program and they identify their transactions, they have an asset that's unbelievably valuable to the entire ecosystem to grow. And that obviously is an opportunity for them to monetize and create revenue from. So about the shifting of budgets, it is definitely so that in our research, the majority of respondents of brands say that 95%, by the way, say a lot of the money we spend on retail media comes from other budgets that we were going to spend through that retailer anyway. You know, some such as sponsorships and events or trade budgets. That's a reality. So it's on to the retailer to say, if I don't want this to happen, I need to bring in, real capabilities around data that allows us to get new net spending from the brands onto retail media, or to get, money from the digital budgets, because you really can demonstrate that your media works better than what the agency will put on programmatic media elsewhere. Also in our research, it becomes absolutely clear that anywhere in the world where there's a lot of spend on retail media, brands are complaining about a lack of collaboration around it. Very often, the retailer creates a sales team, asks the brands to invest in media, and they feel like they're just forced to do it, and they don't understand why. They want more collaboration. It's really not an option in the long term to have a sustainable media business and not share some of the insights that you have out of that as a retailer, right? So I'm really appealing here to retailers to say, if you're not the first mover and you haven't already done it in a way where your relationship with the brand is impacted, then be a second mover and think about it in a fresh way. Do it with precision, do it with collaboration. There's a lot of data in here, and I don't know if I have the time to go through all of it. It is mostly relevant to the more sophisticated retailers that run retail media networks, but some of the main other issues that exist in countries is that retailers measure the effectiveness of their media in a very different way than other retailers. So as a brand, you have no idea. You don't know which retailer has a better retail media network, which retailer has the shoppers that they should be targeting. They see it, comparing apples and oranges, as they say. That doesn't work very well. So if you're going to stand up retail media in Italy, one of the best ways to do that is first to agree, how are we going to measure this? Are we going to do a simple match market? Should we require that it closes the loop through the loyalty program and we get an actual one-for-one test and control and understand what the lift is? Or should we even go further and say we want also to bring in other data sets to really understand the incrementality that comes from these marketing initiatives around the retailer? But if there is agreement, then you have something that a media company, an agency can say, all right, we agree, this is what we're going to look at, and as long as we see ROI from that KPI, it's logical to spend more dollars towards retail media, which then, of course, supports the investment that retailers need to do there. So those are the big pain points. Collaboration is sometimes lacking, standardized measurements is lacking, and that is a good thing to start with. When it comes to transparency, I guess it's a culture shift, right? It's a culture change. Being transparent and sharing some of those insights that you have as a retailer with a third party is definitely a risky thing to do in certain cases. But there's a right way and a wrong way, like everything else. The information, ideally, is not shared in a raw format. You share a platform, a system that people can log into. They look at the same stuff, and it's high level enough so you don't risk giving away intelligence that you don't want to. The value is not just about the sales lift. There's also value in truly creating, collaboration around other topics, like seeing your media performance next to what your supply chain health is, or next to what the category and shopper insights are. you actually can tell a much bigger story about retail media than just saying it performed, it had sales lift or not. So I'm going to go and say it all starts with data at scale. Building the data is one thing, but once you have created the data, how do you manage it, right? So these are the traditional steps of data management: having confidence, implementing the right opt-in for compliance with privacy laws, enrich the data using AI, so you understand your shopper. What's the attribute of this shopper in this category? Is he loyal to a brand or not? Is he a frequent shopper? Does he have a certain price affinity? All that goes into your data, right? Then you basically make sure that this runs automatically, that this is almost real time, so you can use it when you need it. Then it's about giving access to that data through platforms, both first internally to your own teams at the retailer, and then ultimately to third parties. And at the end of the day, the collaboration is the data utility that is the perfect way to move forward. So here we are. What I think is, major problem is fragmentation, right? The more retailers there are, the harder it is for a brand to go and invest in each retailer. So you see, brands don't typically invest in retailers in more than a few. They pick the top few retailers, and that's what it sticks with. So the advice here again is either you're one of the first retailers that has a good retail media network and you get grandfathered in, you're part of the mix, or of course, retailers could potentially work on platforms that aggregate or that are more of a network where multiple retailers work together and they provide the media that way. But there's obviously a limit to how many media networks that a brand is going to invest in. Final part of my presentation is to just give a few tips, a few other keys to being a successful retail media network. First, big insights that I started the presentation with, it's much more about than just about the media itself. Retail media is a combination of strategies that you can package as a big retail media network, including digital promotions. It is about precision. It's differentiating through precision. It's about making sure that what you do with the data is something that a third party doesn't have the granularity of data to do. So if a brand thinks that they can do it with their own data, they won't spend it on retail media. But if you manage your data and create the right granularity, you can obviously drive better performance and be more valuable. The channels, holistic offering, start with things like activating your data in offsite media, in digital screens, on programmatic media. The e-commerce doesn't have to be the starting point. If e-commerce doesn't make sense for your retailer to invest in, then start somewhere else. But don't wait to do retail media until you have a big e-commerce business. In some cases, that will take way too long, right? At the end of the day, in terms of the systems you need as a retailer, it's something that you can rely on for a very long time. It is something that ideally is a modular system that you take in-house. The technology already exists. It's not about just going to start with technology. First, think about that story about Dollar General. What is it that I want my retail media network to be? What are the objectives that I want? And then implement the modular technology in your way in-house. And ultimately, and the last and most important point, is that it's extremely hard to find talent. If you pick talent that is just media focused, maybe somebody that has worked for a publisher, a large TV station or newspaper network, and you bring that senior person in, they will be thinking about, oh, it's media, I need to increase the yield, I need to sell as many impressions as possible. Wrong. If that's what you do, you're going to crash the media business because you are a retailer, you're not a publisher. You need to focus on how do I engage the shopper and win the shopper. So having talent that starts with that point, maybe it's somebody with a D2C app, a B2C app, maybe it's somebody that has built, an entrepreneur that has built a business with respect for his customer. Those are people that need to think on all levels and say, this is something new. This is a startup within the retailer that is going to do things in a special way, in a differentiated way. Very much on brand for that retailer. So talent is going to be the key thing. Start bringing a few people into your organization that get the freedom to experiment and to understand what is the vision going to be of that retail media network. Ultimately, it's all about taking insights and activating against it. And the most ultimate approach, which now exists in retailers like Kroger or Walmart, is that the retailer goes to the brand in a GPP and with the manufacturer and says, what is the objective for this quarter? What is the objective for this year? We're going to put $3 million behind this objective, and we're going to deliver that. And all the rest is up to the retailer. How they manage the campaigns, how they use the data. It's about reaching that objective. And more technology get involved. For instance, how can I win back customers that I lost? That's an objective. How can I introduce a new product? That's an objective. You can put a specific budget and value behind that and plan it that way. That's how a retailer can think. Final slide, because I know I'm slightly over time. The competition for these funds is very intense. It is good to be one of the first in the market. As a retailer, it's good to be one of the first. It's good to create that relationship with the manufacturers early on and do it in partnership. It takes a lot of planning and a lot of investment. The investment may be higher in the beginning than your revenue. If you have consultants that say your revenue will be very high and that will justify the investment, I don't think you're on the right track. First, think about what you want to do. You're going to make an investment. The revenue will come on a basis of what your value, what your product is worth, right? You can't predict that ahead of time. Don't believe a consultant that says, oh, next year you can get 15 million euros just from scratch. No, it takes time to build a team. It takes time to plan it. It takes time to build the technology. It takes time to accrue the data and understand your own data. So it's a slow build. That's why starting early is a good idea. Essentially, the ability to create more meaningful engagements with shoppers has to be one of the biggest differentiators you have. It's about that story. It's about who is Natalie, who is John, what do they want, who are they as a customer segment of my business, as a retailer, and what am I going to do for them? That creates such a positive energy when everybody knows it's about that customer, it's about that shopper, that collaboration can happen between big manufacturers and big retailers, that collaboration can happen and can lead to a win-win-win. So thank you for hearing me out. There are many retail media networks that are super successful. There are equally as many that are failing miserably. That story doesn't get out in the news, but that's there too. And so I hope I helped you on the path for brands to ask from the retailers specific collaboration, and for retailers to think about this over the long term, very much on the brand, with the identity of that retailer, how to build a successful retail media network. Thank you very much.